the DeepSeek story somewhat. It was 4 weeks ago that we were on here, January 28th, discussing the impact of DeepSeek and whether or not it would be truly disruptive to the AI cycle that was emerging. Mm-hmm. And I was making the point that it looked like, given the capital flows we had seen on that prior Monday, it was more about the bottlenecks shifting in the marketplace. The moats that companies had perhaps were changing. It wasn't so much about the semiconductor companies laying down the infrastructure with the picks and shovels. We were moving into a phase 2 story where, for lack of a better phrase, it was now the gold rush part of our analogy. Since the market opened on Monday, January 27th, the NASDAQ right now is trading higher by about 2.3%. But this phase 2 basket with names like Amazon, Apple, Meta, Snow, SPGI, FDS, IQVIA, United Healthcare, Axon, Palantir, that basket that we discussed that Tuesday is now up 7% since DeepSeek Monday. And I think we learned an important part of this story, how it's unfolding at least in the last few weeks, but particularly last night. Not just that Singapore has been used as a pass-through to get the various Chinese companies all the NVIDIA GPUs that they need, but rather that compute still really does matter. Grok 3 AI was released last night, and for a variety of the benchmarks, it is scoring at the highest end possible. It may be the world's best AI model that we have right now. In the math, the AI ME24 test, the science GPQA test, and the coding LCB test, Grok 3 and Grok 3 Mini are beating DeepSeek, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and GPT-4o across the board. I would mention Gemini, but Google's Gemini is a bit of a joke. The point is here that clearly scaling up for compute is working. This supercluster that they have, 200,000 GPUs, is the first iteration of what will be one that's 5 times larger moving forward. It's a new project for Grok 4. I think it just goes to show that this can be done and compute really matters here. Grok AI didn't exist as of 18 months ago, and now they're the frontier model. So if you have the money and you can lay down the infrastructure still, you can get to the front of the pack fairly quickly. I think this is actually really important news to show that you do require that NVIDIA GPU to scale and compute right now, even if DeepSeek is offering an alternative way. So the phase 2 rally continues, guys. AI is just moving into this new realm, but the story is certainly far from over.
Okay. I'm not sure.
So you're just saying it's easier to get into the space? Is that what you're saying? That
I don't know if that's a question or a statement. Well, I'm not sure what,
It's more of a, let me explain what's going on with the Grok AI thing. But Tony, I think it's a bit of both, right? There are more than one way to skin this cat now. If you have the firepower, you can build the biggest, best model possible. And we're still seeing the scaling as compute goes up, follow that linear path, which means if we build even bigger superclusters, we're going to get better results, right? Yeah. So the money is worth the investment, so to speak. But the other side of it is that if you can't afford it, we now have this reinforcement learning mechanism that DeepSeek put out that shows it can be done in a fairly cost-effective manner. So, broadly, we're moving into the second generation of this move. NVIDIA is probably going to be well supported moving forward. I think it says a lot that we're nearly back to $140 a share, where we had closed at 142 or so that prior Friday to DeepSeek Monday. For all the stories of AI being dead, I think it's long live AI moving forward. And those names that were blistered and battered a few weeks ago should still be back on our radar if the volatilities allow for it.
It's funny that it's an interesting discussion to me because, like, on the one hand, I'm interested in the story, but on the other hand, I have a hard time. I have a hard time processing how it's where it's applicable, like where it's practical, where is it functional? Like I only know, I guess I'm having a hard time figuring out what everybody's going to do with this stuff. Like, we have a fairly large company, $4 billion company. Like, I don't even know where it fits in with us. I'm not sure where it fits in. I don't get where the fit is. Like, I'm having a hard time processing, what do you need all this firepower for? Like, is it does more firepower mean less errors? Like, what does more firepower mean? Is it mean it's cheaper? Does it mean there's less errors? does it mean that it needs less training? Like I'm just confused how it all fits in a practical sense with firms like us or anybody else. Small firms, large firms. Like, what do you think?
So first off, I don't think AI has anything to do with what we do here on Tasty Live. Tony, our job is secure, and I will pitch that perspective forever. The other side of this is, though, that with inventory management, actually, and supply chain management, there have been some meaningful improvements. Companies like Walmart and Kroger's have noted in recent earnings call how they've saved hundreds of millions of man hours in terms of engineering time to sort and classify products, which allows them to redeploy resources into other areas. So in terms of productivity on a corporate level, it may mean that you need fewer workers to do more, of course, for rudimentary data analysis. And quite frankly, market researchers, those kind of jobs, I find myself thinking about where I was when I started my career and how a lot of that work I was doing then, I don't need an intern for it per se right now, because the AIs can simply do that work much faster and I don't have to teach someone to do it. It already knows. But outside of that, I mean, we really need to think about the large scale applications for consumers here. I know generative AI is really promising, so to speak, for what it may do for workers, particularly knowledge workers. I'm looking for the applications, and I think it says a lot that Microsoft itself has been trapped in a sideways range because they have been at the forefront of this. They had a first mover advantage. They clearly failed to capitalize on it. But the money is still going to come into the space, I think, is the point, right? So if we're worried about the gravy train ending, this capital expenditure wave turning off, the evidence is piling up in front of us that there's still good reason to do the infrastructure spending, even if the fruits of that labor haven't yet matured.
I was never worried about, there's so much capital out there. I was never worried about that gravy train ending. I'm worried about everybody's built these amazing mousetraps. I don't know what to do with it. I don't think that Microsoft is putting in, 100 or Meta's putting in $100 billion and everybody's putting in $100 billion because they're worried about Walmart's supply chain processing. That's not the end game here. And I don't think they're worried about, oh my God, we're just going to save Kroger and Albertsons. We're going to make their life so much easier that they're going to pay us, $100,000 a month or whatever it's going to be. I just don't see it. My challenge with this whole thing is, they're spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't see where the revenue comes in. Cost savings doesn't necessarily translate immediately to revenue. So I don't see where these companies are going to get back the money. Now, I see why they're spending the money. They're spending the money because they have it. And it is way more interesting to spend money on something that will send your share price higher as opposed to acquiring somebody else that you actually don't know what it's going to do for your share price. So I get the idea of spending money on AI because it fits the narrative for basically every company because that's what the street wants to hear. I just don't know how people are going to monetize it.
I think the next problem that we're going to run into from my very rudimentary understanding of what's going on with the story is that companies are beginning to lock down their data because they're learning that the slop that a lot of these AI models are putting out is ultimately being used to train other AI models, which is leading to even
that's
more
all it is.
slop generation.
That's what it is, Chris. That's what everything, that is what that is the definition of AI.
Then that raises the question, who has the proprietary data that actually matters, that isn't slop, that you can rely on, right? And those companies are doing well right now. So the market beat rolls on, Tom. Who's to say that this is the top is my constant refrain, right? If it's a bubble, it's a bubble. And I have no idea where the top is. So let's not pretend that it's here.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about market tops or this is time to sell. That's not it. I'm just trying to figure out, okay, so this guy built a slightly better mousetrap than this guy, and this guy's going to build a slightly better mousetrap, and they're going to have these, pissing contests from now into eternity. I'm just trying to figure out where are we using all this stuff? That's
what's
all.
Its use?
Yeah, what's the use? Where let's
kill H&R Block first, and then Jackson Hewitt with AI. Those should be the first targets. Tax preparation.
I mean,
my son's using it in school, loves it. It makes his homework a lot easier.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Great. How much is he going to spend for it?
Yeah.
I think what's so interesting about DeepSeek, as opposed to these other, AI firms that are spending hundreds of billions or whatever they're spending, is that for whatever DeepSeek spent, they proved that a disruptor can enter. Because I think that what concerns people like me about the whole AI business is I don't want to be forced into choosing between OpenAI, XAI, whatever the other, whatever my choices are. But right now, I basically don't want to choose between Meta, Google, whoever all the players are. I like the idea that this space is open to disruption, because that means from a consumer standpoint, the pricing will be competitive and we won't be priced out of it. I also really am curious to see how far people push the limits. Like, one of the cool things about Tasty is that every day, we essentially start with we start from a blank space. And every day we create some fun content. I have heard AI DJs and AI newscasters and AI promoters and things like that. And it's scary bad. And I just hope we don't get into that, I hope that's not what content becomes.
That's probably what content's going to become, Tom. I hate to break it to you.
I really hope it's not. It won't happen in my day. I hope it doesn't happen at all, because that will be, the scary part, when content, when you can't tell the difference between real content and AI content.
Well,
I mean, you can see it. You can see it now when you watch some videos and they're hysterical, but they're not real. And you can start to see it. But I think that. I just think that it's going to be, that's where there's potentially that's where we cross the line.
We could always go the Frank Herbert route in Dune, and if the AI takes over, the Butlerian jihad, to free ourselves from the thinking machines, Tom. I'm just imagining you saying, my Dune, my Arrakis, my Tasty trade, as you look upon your empire.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah. Again, I'm still waiting for somebody to tell me who's going to monetize, how everybody's going to monetize all this stuff, but whatever.
Monetize is a great idea.
Yes. What else do we got?
The monetization may not be the wrapper, right? Like, if you're going open source, then it's the knowledge that the data sets really matter more than the wrapper that sits around the consumer facing product. In any event,
but somewhere in the cycle, it has to be monetized. Somebody has to pay for it.